Page started a broadcast. You will be live soon.
I'm guessing it's the broadcast thing is probably set up to auto record, I hope.
I hope so as well.
I'm back again.
It says
I
we're
think you
live.
guys have to.
Yeah, we're live. And we'll get started in just a moment with our adventures in a scaling company. But we are going to wait just a couple minutes because I think we are early.
Yeah, not a problem.
But yeah, the snow was wild here. I'm on the Mass border.
It's unbelievable. My sister's up in Lexington, and it was like the weekend before, just planted like beets and a couple other things, and I'm like, that's crazy that you have that much snow right now. You know,
Hi, Sal.
I don't know why.
I was just saying it's
kicking me out, so hopefully I don't get kicked out anymore.
Oh, hopefully. I think we're all looking good and pretty much ready to go. It officially gets started at 3:25, which is right about here. So I'll just say thank you so much for joining this conversation. I was so excited to see your names on this list for the panel. I've known all of you in different ways and actually over a lot of years when I think about it. You know, Tom was involved with Checkmate when our company was redoing its website, and Nicole, gosh, I've known you for about a decade when you came onto the scene with, you know, early funding and the Women of Innovation program, and Sal with YEI and some of the great programs they had back in the day when you were there, and just, you know, you've been in the incubator and out and about talking with people about what you do. So it's just great to have you all here to talk about the entrepreneurial adventures of having a scaling company. You know, there's another group that's talking about the lessons, and I really want to make sure I'm focused on the adventure of being an entrepreneur. And maybe what I'll do is just introduce each of you very quickly. I've got a couple of sentences I hope captures the spirit of what you do, but please, you know, in your questions, just at any time you can fill in the gaps of some of the interesting things that you are working on now, and, you know, bits of your journey along the way. I'd appreciate that too. So we have Nicole Wagner, and she is CEO of Lambda Vision, and they're creating what we hope is a cure to certain retinal diseases like age-related macular degeneration. And I believe it's an implant where you're actually growing proteins, and it gets really scientific from there. But she's just been a community builder everywhere she goes, and all kinds of props to you, Nicole. We've got Tom, and I hinted that he was involved in Checkmate Digital, but you've gone so stealthy lately. You know, I see that on LinkedIn that you're, you know, in this stealth company, so I'm not going to mention what you're doing right now. But you're having fun. You had a successful exit. You've been looking at ventures to invest in for yourself, and maybe doing something interesting and new.
Really excited to talk about it.
I can't wait. And Sal, this is, even though this has been a big part of your life for a while, this is maybe not your first rodeo. You were involved with as an engineer at a startup that had a successful exit, and then you decided you wanted to be CEO and took on Yale and by storm.
And I decided I wanted to be CEO, but so it happened.
So it happened. And now with Arcos Golf, you're using AI and data to help my golf score. Thank you so much. You're a magician. But you know, your products have just taken off. You were in the Apple Store within 2 years after starting the idea of, you know, creating products to help golf. And you know, I did read somewhere that you're a scratch golfer. Is that right?
That's correct. Thanks to Arcos technology, I'm now a scratch golfer.
So that's probably the most important thing I wanted to kind of mention. And today I just thought maybe it'd be fun to jump in and ask you guys about some of the places where your adventure has taken you. I imagine that there are certain events that happen that kind of steer you to where you are now. And maybe where you are now is a little bit of a surprise to even you. I know for me that sometimes I think, wow, how did I get here? But there are those pivot points in my life where I can say, yeah, you know, that happened and then I'm here and then I'm here. And maybe you could talk about some of those big things that have influenced where you are right now. Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, I know for me, you introduced the Lambda Vision artificial retina, right? And our company is developing a retinal prosthetic to treat patients blinded by end-stage retinal degenerative diseases. So we're looking at retinitis pigmentosa as our entry, and then we're going to follow on to the larger market of macular degeneration. And, you know, what's sort of a spin, I guess, in some of this development for us is that we're doing a lot of work on the International Space Station. So for us, you know, we're part of Mass Challenge in 2016. We won the Casis Boeing Prize while we were there. And that kicked off our journey to a lot of funding and a lot of work on the International Space Station to explore how we can manufacture our artificial retina in a microgravity environment. So since that time in 2016, we have received a little bit over $6 million in grants from NASA. We actually have a project on the International Space Station right now, which should be returning very soon. And we'll be flying at least 4 more times over the next 2 to 3 years to explore the effects of microgravity on the deposition process. So for a lot of people, they ask, you know, how the heck do you get there? Where does vision and microgravity tie in? And if I would have asked, you know, myself in 2016 if NASA would be our biggest funder, the answer probably would have been no. But, you know, it has really led for us to a very interesting way and a development pathway that is very exciting right now. And so we're now beyond the artificial retina, looking at ways to expand commercialization in low Earth orbit. So in terms of, you know, just adventures and places where you start and you never know where you'll end, that's one crazy adventure for me, for sure. And, you know, now we're doing a lot of really exciting work. You know, I started off knowing very little bit about space exploration and how to manufacture in microgravity. And I've since learned, you know, been partnered with some really great people. Space Tango was our implementation partner. So this has been very, very fun. And every day is certainly a little bit different for me. Beyond that, you know, we're certainly very focused on the artificial retina. That's the core technology that we're developing. And so everything that we're learning in microgravity is being directly applied to the artificial retina technology. So that's, you know, when I think about adventures and where you start and where you end, this is definitely one that's been exciting and a little bit different for us, for sure.
For sure. I can imagine that there was a time when you had to think about sort of paying that much attention to space and wondering, would it be worth it given all the time you spent on your core product and the path you were on originally? Like, did you have?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, when we started this project, I mean, it was really an exploratory project to figure out, you know, does microgravity impact deposition of proteins? And so the hypothesis here is that the way that we manufacture this artificial retina on the ground terrestrially is very much subject to the effects of gravity. So things like sedimentation of solutions, homogeneity of those solutions, stability, the electrostatic interactions that affect binding are all influenced by gravity. in a microgravity environment, you alleviate a lot of those effects of gravity, of course, and that creates a much more homogeneous thin film. So, in terms of also, one of those bucket list items that you don't know will exist at the time, when we flew the first time on a SpaceX rocket in 2016, we were SpaceX VIP. We got to watch it at the Kennedy Space Center. It was such a cool experience just to see our product, being launched into space, and then we can see how it's the interactions on the ground as well. So it's just a really, really cool experience, and that very first flight has now led to significant increase in our funding, and almost a slight shift in how we've been thinking about development and manufacturing, especially how we're developing this artificial retina and thinking about microgravity manufacturing.
Awesome. What a product launch.
Literally.
Sal, speaking of products, can you tell us a little bit about, how your product has developed and your business, and maybe a little bit about places where it's taken you that you never expected?
Who's the question for?
Having trouble hearing you?
Sorry. No, I was saying, are you asking me? I don't know who the question was directed at.
Yeah, sorry, Sal. I was hoping to hear from you. Again, just about those pivot points,
Sure.
your business is on a roll. When you look back, how'd you get here?
So many random, I think, events have to happen. It is luck in a way, but it's like also putting yourself in the situations of luck, where you're out there. I think back, one of the things I think that was pivotal was when I was going to business school at Yale, we organized this golf summit to Bandon Dunes. We convinced Yale to pay for 10 students to go golfing, but we invited some of the important alumni and had a business school case study done around we had a couple of professors involved, and it was around the future of golf, and what impact, what might be environmental impacts, maybe socioeconomic changes that golf needs to go through, all that stuff. And I invited the head of R&D from Callaway to come, and I would say one lucky coincidence was that person where we were hosting the event was that person's favorite golf course in the world, and so they ended up showing up because of that. And then I ended up forming a relationship with his name's Alan Hocknell, and that's really the lucky break there was because I had a relationship with him. Eventually, Callaway actually reached out to me saying you're pestering us so much, they're working on this product which was going to go to market apparently, and I was I want to be a beta tester, I want to be this, that, and I guess I pestered them enough that they were listen, we're not going to do this, but if you want to take it and run with it, go ahead. And I said that chance of that course being that person's favorite course was that I would be doing something else. And I think throughout the history, we found one of our most important engineers I've found. I got connected to. I remember when Callaway reached out to us, we were negotiating the licensing agreement to get the technology, basically take it out from Callaway, and that was very, very hard because there was internally people had worked on it for a long time. They didn't want to give it up, but executive team was no, we're not going to pursue this. So it was this internal friction. So we kept going on for I thought they reached out, it would be easy to license technology, but 6-8 months later, nothing had happened, and I was just making trips to California. And I remember one day I was there right outside the Callaway headquarters, and their lawyers called me. They're sorry, we're canceling the meeting. There's no reason for you to come in. There's nothing to negotiate. I was I just flew out here. I'm here for the whole week. So then I got connected to one of my friend's dad, who's in LA. He's okay, I'll take you out golfing because you're just stuck here. And so we went golfing with him. And he was like, you know, if you're working on GPS and sensors and this and that, I have a really good friend who might be an amazing engineer for you, but he's in France and all this stuff. And I got connected to him because that day, like, I was actually quite like down. I was like depressed, like, okay, I flew out here, these guys are not meeting with me. I actually wanted to go back in my hotel room and just sit. But I kind of pushed myself through to go out and meet somebody new. And that person introduced us to this amazing genius engineer who's still with us. And he solved like some of the hardest problems. Maybe those are a couple of stories where, like, I mean, I think luck plays a huge part.
Being open to the opportunities.
Yeah.
A lot of being in the right place at the right time, a lot of serendipity. You know, that's for us, it was literally we were sitting at the right table. They came around, they knocked, they said, Cases and Boeing is coming. And we said, all right, well, let's just sit in a meeting. And, you know, this sparked this huge project. So much of it is, you know, my philosophy is just show up because, you know, you never know where it's going to take you.
Yeah.
That's it. Show up and you never know who you'll end up meeting in these different events.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
Seems like you have a couple of things you could point to that have changed recently.
Yeah, a couple of things. To the show up point, Nicole, right? Like, there was an event in New York several years ago that I ended up missing a train, and I went to the event just to see kind of what it was all about. And I'm Lebanese. I'm a Lebanese American, and this was specifically for MENA, Middle East and Northern Africa entrepreneurs. And I ended up going there, and fast forward 6 months, I was coordinating an impact investing event in Beirut directly. And that was a crazy experience for me because I'd never actually gone back to Lebanon and sort of experienced that. And to see so much energy around impact entrepreneurs and impact investing was like very electric to me. And that really is what kind of got me to a whole bunch of like these impact focused organizations like peer groups like Nexus and stuff like that. And you know, I was still at my Checkmate at that time. I was still at my agency at that time during, you know, when I went abroad there. But the serendipity of it all, right? To make it full circle to sort of what I'm going into now is like at Checkmate in 2019, I went really deep into a platform called Zapier. If anyone is familiar with that, it's an API connection. It's an automation software. So every time you get an email, you could put it in a spreadsheet, or every time you won a deal in HubSpot, you can automatically send an invoice in QuickBooks, you know, stuff like that. And I had spent a ton of time at the beginning of 2019 focused on automating the inside of my agency at that time because I didn't have a COO. And all of that sort of effort putting into packaging these automations ended up leading to, you know, an exit to Mind Trust Labs. They're based in New Haven, out of district, awesome agency, awesome group. You know, a lot of my team is still there. And I had just left to get out of the agency world. Really, I wanted to experience some new things, and it was really interesting in 2020, sort of being, you know, alone, right, both physically and business wise, to just explore all the things that I wanted to explore as a solo practitioner, right? And I was doing a lot of automation related work as a consultant at that point throughout 2020. And in you know, fast forward to January of this year, I sort of codified it all into a new company, which has certainly been, you know, an adventurous scaling endeavor, right? We're already up to 10 people in the first quarter of this year, which is exciting for a lot of different reasons. But you know, this automation space as a whole, I think is just very interesting as it blends mindfulness and impact and just the way people are working, right? Because everything is totally in flux, and people are copying and pasting different things from different corners of the internet just to make sure systems are up to date. And just like thinking about the future of work and what it means to, be a contributing person inside of an organization. We have a fully remote team. I've never done that before. Right. And like that whole experience has just been really, really interesting to see. But it comes back to just showing up, right? Like you can't do any of these things unless you're sort of poking the sleeping bear and being like, hey, I want to play too. Right? Because that's just this recurring theme of, if you are going to grow and you are going to scale, you have to make some noise too. That's kind of part of the shtick.
And letting people around you know what you're looking for, and being open to those introductions that might come. So I did have a little wave of questions I wanted to get to. And the next topic was on leadership and dealing with people. That's the wildest adventure of them all, right? In your experience working with teams, how do you keep people energized and focused on the task ahead, especially with the past year and what we've gone through? What do you do for your team? Oh, Tom.
Sure, I'll take that one. Yeah, like my team in particular right now, a leadership perspective, we have an all hands every Monday, where everyone at the company, regardless of the time zone they're in, right, tune into a Zoom call and we go through really specific things in the company. But before we even get into sort of the details of what's going on, we do very simply a one-word open. So everyone has a one word that they bring to the meeting Monday morning, explain sort of, they're feeling up, they're feeling excited, they're feeling refreshed, they're a little run down, whatever it is. We very intentionally create that space for vulnerability, for honesty, for just the status of the human. And I think that especially in today's climate, like making room for the soft things that aren't necessarily related to revenue goals or status of projects or whatever those things are, creates a connection, right? And helps people see the forest among the trees when it comes to what is important for my time this week. So, that's one of the things that we do to try to make that space and connect to each other rather than just trying to, align everybody towards this big vision down the road that we may or may not go towards or pivot to or whatever, right? Like it's hard to have a straight line to success these days, but connecting as people, I think, is a core strength in growing a team.
I think for our team, it's certainly, just being very flexible, keeping honest communication with the team right now, and especially since COVID happened, everybody's needs are a little bit different. And I think when you give people the opportunity to really show themselves, and, they are very eager to work for you. I mean, I think the other thing too is as being a leader is it's also being excited about your own technology. If you're excited and passionate, it's easy to get other people very excited and eager to do, work around you. If you come to work and you're like, oh gosh, I got to do this again, then that energy carries through the whole company. So, there are certainly days where that happens, right? And some of that's just hard to avoid. But, there is always the upside, right? This is a challenge, but we'll get through this. And really that team, working as a team to achieve those certain goals are important. In this particular, especially since COVID, we've been, very, let us know what the challenges are. We're here to support each other. It might mean working later hours or alternating shifts or things like that, or people have kids at home, all of these things, we, especially as a small team, Tom talked about scale. It certainly changes the more people that you add and the faster you add them. But for a small team, it's really important, at least for us, that those lines of communication are there and that flexibility is there. And, you know, really we're measuring success on, you know, we have milestones and we will achieve those milestones. But, you know, let us know what you need, how we can help, how we can be more flexible so that we can get there.
Paige, your question was how during COVID specifically or in general?
You know, in general, just what are some of the things you do to just help your team? You know,
I
think of itself
for
as
us,
a team, work together.
Yeah, I think like the few things that we do, which we as a team have started liking. One is we use this tool called OKRs, objectives and key results, which is like it really simplifies what we should focus on because there's so many different things you could be doing, and the company maybe there's like 3 things the company can do well every year, and so we use that, and that's a really I would say really good exercise every quarter because we have healthy debates, disagreements, and like kind of lets you step back and be like, hey, are we doing the right things or not? Like everybody can question it, and we then align on a like, okay, these are the things these objectives we should be hitting, and this is how we'd measure it. I think that's been really helpful in terms of making sure everybody feels like they're whatever they're doing is tied to something we've all agreed upon is important. I think the other piece is like transparency, which you guys mentioned. Like we actually share our board decks with our team. We literally walk the entirety after each board meeting, walk every week. And here was the feedback. Here's what the investors like, what they didn't like. Here's where we're doing well. Here's where we're struggling, which I think is empowering because then everybody like takes ownership on like these are the problems that we all have to fix. And then in that vein, I also think like we try to like in terms of the team that we have, we as a nature of a startup is we attract people who want to be in a startup, and so I think letting them be entrepreneurs, like not really truly managing them in the traditional sense, that's really important. Like they're here on an entrepreneurial journey. Let everybody be an entrepreneur, which means that there might be more mistakes that get made. However, there might be those bigger creative moments that happen that otherwise might get quashed. So I think like that, like feeling of entrepreneurship then gives you empowerment on, and like that's a more fulfilling, maybe existence working somewhere where you feel connected to the mission, power to act. Those are some of the things we do, which makes it fun. We actually also do like golf I'd say every 3 months we do like a company golf tournament, which is getting bigger and bigger now.
Of course you do.
That's also really, really fun.
That's terrific. You know, and I did want to ask you, because all of you have been in this world for a period of time now, you know, and this is a hard role to be an entrepreneur, to work so hard towards goals for so long and keep that in mind. Now, Tom, I know you've had a little break here, but you're just jumping right back in. So now you're looking at another long haul. How do you maintain your sort of sense of self? How do you keep the adventure from crushing you and just staying on all the time? What do you do for a break? How do you calm the jungle?
Amazing question. It's like well, first of all, I did everything wrong the first time. So I learned a lot at Checkmate because I was on all this. I was working, you know, 15-hour days consistently, and there was no sustainability in the way that I was working. So, you know, in this little break I've kind of had in 2020, I spent a lot of that time working on the things that I want to maintain in the next go round, right? And this foray, the company is called X-Ray Tech. So like as I go into X-Ray Tech, you know, am I eating properly? Like yeah, I have on my calendar now lunch every day because I would skip lunch that often. And it was like thing in the culture that everyone at the company knew was like, oh, Tom's going to skip lunch. Like we can book this meeting. And that's like not okay now. Right. So it's like baking in these things into my life that are immovable, which is like sleep and food, right? At this point, which is not a bad minimum to
That's
set
a big
for yourself.
win.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's those little things, right? That like you are in a better mood because you are nourished and you are well rested or whatever. So it's realizing that like I'm not going to be able to show up and help the other people around me in the company that depend on me if I am not taking care of myself. And you know, I would very much so previously subscribe to like the hustle culture and like pushing, you know, as far as you can in that realm. And now it's a lot less of, hey, let's try to do 99 days or 100 days worth of work in 99 days. Instead, let's just have a really great 100 days, right? Like that's a huge mindset difference. To pack information or just quality over quantity. So you know, now it's just being, you know, rigid with myself around the calendar and just like telling myself it's okay to relax, and know that that's actually a, you know, beneficial activity, because the highs are going to be higher if I can just step away from the keyboard for, you know, 10 minutes.
Fair enough. Sal or Nicole?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things is I joined this organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, and that's been phenomenal because like every month, I mean, the whole structure is kind of reflecting on a business and family life as an entrepreneur. Really thinking about the past, you kind of just like charging towards the future. So I think like that has brought about like more awareness. Every month we have to sit down with my forum, which is like 7 or 8 people. They're like, what were the highs, what life, business, and I slow down and realize, like charging full steam ahead isn't always the answer. So I think that like just the reflection and the forum for reflecting from others' experiences. Yeah, so that's probably like the biggest thing I've done personally.
I think for me, you know, I've certainly have really great mentors, so that's always helped, you know, to just be able to, you know, let your hair down and really be vulnerable and say the things that are challenging you each week. You know, that has been very helpful in terms of mentorship. The other thing that helps me, you know, in the greater goal of our company is the fact that what we're doing has such an impact on people. You know, the fact that we're trying to cure blindness, that there are some days where you're like, there are so many easy things that we could be doing. And then you'll get an email from a patient that'll say, you know, we can't wait. You're going to help my grandmother. You're going to help my aunt. Or, you know, this has been, you know, an inherited disease in my family for so long. You know, you know, keep working on it. We know you're a little bit away, but this is really, really important to us. So every once in a while, those, you know, those emails really recharge your batteries. And the other thing, and as much as this also adds chaos to my already busy life, is having family and kids. You know, one of the nice things about kids is that they do require attention and they require time and they want attention and time. And so, you know, just by nature of that, it makes you kind of stop what you're doing and work and go in and have a little bit of off time, you know, have a little bit of downtime, which, you know, creates a little bit of that balance. You know, you don't feel like you're glued to the computer for hours at a time. You know, I'm taking the kids to karate and, you know, I have that little bit of drive and then they're in their little session and I have my own time. So that I think has also been helpful. And particularly with, you know, I know this isn't about a COVID talk here, but that has made me sort of readjust all of my priorities and how we manage things, and just having some type of flexibility and understanding everybody's different work schedules. And so, you know, that has made me have to reshift some of my priorities as well. But I think, having that flexibility, knowing what the goal is that you're trying to achieve, all of that, you'll get there. And the other thing is, when you're leading the company, I mean, you're motivated to do it. For me, there's the motivation because of the patients that we're going to be helping. There's the personal motivation because this is important to me and I've worked a long time on this. And then there's the fact that my kids, they look at me and they say, Mom, I want to be a scientist, or they have business cards in their hands and they are like, I'm a business girl, so that part of it, it's making I'm being a role model for the kids. And I think for me, that's also motivating and helping to keep some of the balance and keeping me from going crazy and thinking that, this is just a really hard thing to do.
I think
and we're not perfect, but striving towards balance is good.
Like the passion and believing in that end state, like you're going to make things better for people. I think it is like during like every business is going to go through ups and downs. Startups go through a lot of downs, and I think like the passion from the leader, which has to come from within, I think is really important for you to ride those lows, kind of keep going.
Totally. And just to echo Sal's point about YPO, I'm part of an organization, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, YPO, EO. There's a whole bunch of peer groups like that I think can be really helpful for like putting personal things and business things just in boxes and sort of orientating yourself and sitting with those different feelings. Mentorship alongside of that, right? It's all sort of the same vein of just getting connected to people who can understand what you're experiencing.
And that's a great segue. I know I said I wanted to mention that I've witnessed all of you giving back to students and other entrepreneurs through mentoring programs or advisory groups. And I think that's just incredible. But I thought maybe you could talk a little bit about what you get out of those relationships, from the idea sharing with smart students to, just the personal satisfaction. Like, how do you justify the time that you spent at those activities giving back? What do you get out of it? Nicole.
I mean, I think there's the obvious sort of quid pro quo part of it where, you go to a meeting and you mentor somebody and there's a reciprocal type of mentorship, or maybe, we provide, an introduction to somebody and they'll provide introductions back. So there's certainly the business part of this mentoring and giving back. Really personally, it's everybody I've ever interacted with have really become good friends, and they are really people that I can be vulnerable with. They know my family, they know, my dog, they know all of these different things. And so for me, that's important, because being a CEO and an entrepreneur can be very, very lonely. Sometimes you always feel like you have to be perfect, that there's, you're always you're always putting on your best face so that you can present to investors, and you're selling things, and you're trying to sell your business. And that's really hard because, I think they just said it on American Idol last night, but perfection is an illusion, right? So it is very, very difficult to maintain that, that perfection. And so having mentors and, other people who have done it before and talking through that process to know that, you will encounter challenges. It's okay. I had a board member say, Nicole, stop perseverating. You've thought about this 1,000 times. If you make a mistake or it's not the right path, we're all here to support that next change and decision. We'll adapt. It's about pivoting. It's, that's the constant part of being an entrepreneur. So I think, for me, it's the friendships that I built long term. Of course, there's always business that's done in this. But it's really a support system, because if you're going to go at this alone, it's going to be really, really hard. And, it's a long journey that way. So to go, through this process with support, is helpful. And also, I mean, as you're building your business, everybody's been there. You know, I've been in that same position, looking for who's the best accountant, or, you know, how do I write this grant? And so now that I've had some experience doing that, you know, it's I know how much time it saves to have somebody else say, you know, just look at this person or this referral, or, you know, I've been there, done that. So for me, I mean, I've been very, very fortunate. So it's very easy for me to want to help those around me as well.
And I would say I feel like it's part of my job. Starting with YEI, like I've had amazing all the way through. They've never asked for anything in return, and part of my job, like that's what I like. That's go to YEI. Actually, post YEI, the city stuff. Like every time I go, I get connected to a few teams, and I help them with connections, with whatever like conversations that might want to have, stuff they should be thinking about, not specifically regarding like maybe their industry, but in general, like there's a lot of patterns that are similar in startup land, like the emotional side of it, the people side of it, all that. So I feel like it's my job, something I should.
Totally, yeah, and it's like, you know, if you don't, who else will? That's that's a part of it too. And you know, I think the question was, you know, Paige, you asked, what do we actually get out of it? And for me, the thing that I end up getting out of it is like, how do you take your whole experience of whatever you've just done, whatever the last 6 months of or 10 years of my life were in the entrepreneurship world, and like condense that into whatever the 2 or 3 sentences is that this particular person could or should hear right now that would help them. Like that's a process. That's an art. That's a skill that you can evolve over time. Of like, how can I deliver the right information to this person to like actually help them, not just like view my perspective and like ask them to filter it, right? Because like as entrepreneurs, we've all been mentored and we've all had great mentors that give us the right information at the right time, and we've had mentors that just give us information, and then we need to sort it out and figure out like whether or not this is something we want to listen to. And I think that's like, that's a fun process for me. That's a really interesting process for me of like trying to figure out like what are the lines that are missing in their drawing to help them like complete their picture. Because that's ultimately I think what we're trying to do, right? Is just to connect a few extra dots and help someone see what's right in front of them.
I will add to what Tom's saying, that I mean, like if I think deeply about what do I get out of it, like in the end, why are we building products? We're building things to make an impact, and I feel like through mentoring, it's another opportunity to make an impact. And so maybe that is probably the self-serving part of it. Gives you an opportunity to actually make positive one.
Yeah, I on top of that too, I mean, Sal, you mentioned, you know, there are so many people that give and don't ask anything in return. And I think at the early stages of a business, that's so true. And also, you know, of my employees, you know, we've had interns that have worked really, really, really hard. You know, we've had people that have volunteered their times, consultants that have gone unpaid. And, you know, when you look back and you're like, that's a person I would recommend, or they're just, you know, they're very motivated and they're very selfless in what they're doing. You know, it also builds that excitement around what you're doing. It's, again, you can feel that passion, you know what their motivation is behind things. And so, you know, that just speaks to the, you know, I think for us, again, being a good leader, being excited, having great mentors, you know, it's what you need, all of that to have a successful business.
And that becomes your community too, your entire support system. Well, thank you. I think that's probably the last word for today. It's been wonderful to talk with you. I know we were scheduled to end a couple minutes ago, but I just want to thank you, Nicole, Tom, Sal, for spending your time, and I can't wait to see you in person.
Same here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.